So we're going to start with Micah or Micha, which is the name of this prophet, as you see right here in Hebrew. This means who, that is me. Ka means like the, and the letter Hey represents the name Yahweh. So the name Micha or Micah, as they say it as well, Micha means who is like Yahweh. So by that being the name of the prophet, we can understand that he represents Mikael, the Malach, right? The Malach of Yahweh, Mikael, which means who is like the mighty one. In fact, if we put this right here, these three letters right in front of this, we have Mikael. So this prophet represents, as I always say, every prophet, his life, his personality connects with the last, the witness like Moshe, who is also called the prophet. But since the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Mashiach, then every prophet gives testimony of Mashiach. That's why also Mashiach said that he didn't give testimony of himself, or that testimony would be void. There is another one who gives testimony of Mashiach, that being mainly the Father, but also the Father manifesting as the last, who is called the prophet. So every prophet represents the last, but every prophet prophesies of Mashiach the first. For the last would give testimony of he who is the first. So this prophet represents Mikael. Therefore, it talks about a lot of the things that would happen in the end times. For that is the time when Mikael would manifest. Also, it is important, as you can see, the word of Yahweh. Micah is one of the last prophets to come before Mashiach manifested on the earth. So it is interesting how we see Yahweh appearing as Yahweh Elohim during the beginning of history. Then after a while, after the law was given, we can start to see Yahweh manifesting as Yahweh Sabaoth, meaning Yahweh of hosts. But then later on in time, we begin to see the word of Yahweh manifesting. And as we know, the word of Yahweh is Yahushua the Messiah. So that means that when Yahweh Elohim is written in scriptures, that means Yahweh was acting in this reality through a certain set of angels called the authorities. Then when he goes as Yahweh Sabaoth, he was working through a different set of angels that had to do with war, with justice and punishment. That's why Yahweh of hosts, as it is translated. Then the word of Yahweh would appear to the prophets, which means that Mashiach began to manifest before he entered the flesh. And then we see the word taking flesh in Yahuchanan 1, same chapter actually, where we see that the Yahudim were expecting Eliyahu, the Messiah, and the prophet, the one I just mentioned that is represented by Micah. So as we see Davar Yahweh, that is pretty much Mashiach, the word of Yahweh, Asher Haya El Micah, that came to Micah, he who is like Yahweh. So the word of Yahweh basically manifesting to the prophet, which would represent Yahweh manifesting through Yahushua to Mikael when he comes to this reality. Hamorashti. Just a second. Well, there are several things we could see in this name right here that I find interesting, but I'm just gonna focus on the meaning of the name. So I'm gonna see all the names that are here real quick. As you guys know, every time there is a name in the scriptures, is there not only for the historical aspect of the person or the place where things happen, but also to send us a message. For each name has a meaning. In this case, Morashti, that is a person from Moreshet, a possession of God. It was called Moreshet, God. So a possession that is pretty much Moreshet of God. And as we all know already, God is a wine press, which is interesting because there are a couple ways in which this can be, well, two connections basically is my point. Let me just go to the translator. So here we have this God, which means wine press. It's interesting because those who love God, those who, and well, for those who already know, well, I'll explain a little bit more better. This letter, the Gimel, represents a foot, somebody walking. And this is the letter Tav, which is the last of the alphabet. And it is the first letter of the name Tammuz, which is a false messiah mentioned in Ezekiel 8. So this can be seen in a couple ways, because the Tav is also a cross when it comes to the pictographic. So those who walk to the cross, or those who walk to Tammuz, which is interesting because those who are walking towards the false messiah call their mighty one God with a D, but same pronunciation pretty much, and therefore are walking to their own death. Sadly, they are going through the way that leads through death. So that's why they will be representing the many, right? The many who are walking towards the false messiah, and therefore will have to die at the end. And those who will die are actually those who will realize it when it's too late, so they would prefer to die than to get the mark of the beast. So when it comes to them, it'll be a good sign that they die, because that means they rejected the mark. They rejected the false messiah after he was manifested. So they realized it, but they realized it too late for them to be saved without dying. Not only that, but are the many are the ones who are walking towards the false messiah, and therefore walking to their own death for worshiping God, and that is why they will fall into the winepress. They will be thrown into the winepress, which is the meaning of God. The winepress of Revelation 14. I hope that is clear. If it is not, please just ask your questions and I'll explain it a little bit farther. So there are a couple ways, as I was saying, to pronounce this that people nowadays use, right, for their mighty one in English, saying God, because there is another word in Hebrew that if you replace the Tav for a Dalet, which is the letter D, pretty much we have God, which is closer, of course, because of the D. And that is, well, it's actually fortune, the mighty one of fortune, as we see in Isaiah 65:11. It's interesting that it says wormwood over here, because wormwood is the name of the star, one of the stars that will fall on this earth as one of the plagues. And that will be for the fact that the world is worshiping God. So you can see several of those connections with that word. But let me just go back. So Moreshet is the possession of God, the possession of the winepress, depending on how you want to see it, if you want to go deeper into the meaning of God. Then Yotam, which means Yahweh is perfect. Achaz, which means he has grasped, possessing or possessor. Yechizkiyah, Yahweh has made strong. Yahudah, he who praises Yahweh. Shomron, a watch mountain, those who watch, pretty much. And then Yerushalayim, the teaching of Shalom, he who instructs Shalom, he who provides peace. So if we see all the names that are mentioned here, one by one, through the pronunciation of the name, I mean the meaning of each of the names, we have that he who is like Yahweh is the owner of the wine press. Now that is interesting because let me show Isaiah, Yeshayahu chapter 63. I already mentioned the book of Revelation, chapter 14, when the many are thrown into the winepress of the wrath of Yahweh because of the false doctrine in which they were error. Isaiah 63 says, who is this coming from Edom with garments of glowing colors from Botzra? I've explained this verse a lot regarding how Yahweh as the last is coming as a Roman or from Edom, the opposite of Yaakov, just like Yaakov got dressed as Esau, his brother, so that he could take the blessing from Yitzhak. So that's pretty much the main reference being done here, showing how that was a parallel of what the last will do when he manifests, or how Yahweh will manifest as a Gentile, even though he'll be obviously an Israelite because he comes from Joseph. But Joseph had Ephraim and Menashe, who were born in Egypt, and Ephraim was dispersed just like the rest of Israel, but Israel was dispersed. In fact, Ephraim was so huge, had so many people, that many times scripture replaces the term Israel with Ephraim because of how many the descendants of Ephraim are. So the last comes from Ephraim, who is from Joseph. Ephraim was born in Egypt, and Ephraim pretty much was scattered across the four corners of the earth. So the last appears from Ephraim. So to the world, he'll be a Gentile, or from Edom. So who is this coming from Edom with garments of glowing colors from Bosra? Bosra was the place where Job was king. It also connects with the flock of Yahweh. And I mentioned the connection with Job because there are connections between first and last with the story of Job, who is robed in splendor, striding forward in the greatness of his strength. So Yeshayahu the prophet sees Yahweh coming, but he doesn't recognize him, so he has to ask. And Yahweh answers, it is I who speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Why is there red on your raiment? and your garments like one who treads in the winepress, right? So like who treads in the God, like we just saw, right? I have trodden the winepress alone, and from the peoples no one was with me. And I trod them down in my displeasure, and I trampled them in my wrath. Their blood is sprinkled upon my garments, and I have defiled all my raiment. This is interesting because when he comes as the last, as from Edom, part of Asav or Esau, became Rome, and part of them became the false Yahudim, like 134 years before Mashiach came. They were converted to Judaism. So there are some who are the false Yahudim, and there are some who are Romans. The last comes as a Roman, just like Paul was a Roman. His citizenship was from Rome, while he was actually an Israelite. So that is the same idea with the last. He will be a Gentile in paper, but an Israelite in blood. The last also comes as a prodigal son. The prodigal son is actually a story about Yahushua, the first and also the last, who, unlike Mashiach, who came to a virgin and didn't commit a sin in his life, the last does not and is born in the apostasy. So his raiment, his clothing, his body was defiled. So Yahweh speaking says, their blood is sprinkled upon my garments. That's interesting also because remember how the people of Israel, when they wanted to kill Mashiach, they said that his blood may fall upon them and their children if they were making a mistake, pretty much not knowing what they were saying, because they pretty much condemned themselves by saying that they were claiming to be the responsible ones for the death of Mashiach, but spiritually or prophetically speaking, they were saying that they needed to be covered by the blood of Mashiach in order to be justified. Just like we all need his blood, his sacrifice. But now when the last comes, is the blood of the many that is sprinkled upon him, upon his garments, which also connects with the fact that the last now has to die for the many, for the error, and well, actually for the few as well. If there are any questions about why and how, just let me know. I'm just trying to be short. So it says, their blood is sprinkled upon my garments, and I have defiled all my raiment. Basically saying that by being in the winepress and being sprinkled with blood, he was defiled. But this prophetically has a lot to do with the way the last manifests. And the reason why, because of the apostasy, and to pay pretty much atonement for the golden calf, which was a representation of the 2,000 years of apostasy that have passed. So going back here, he who is like Yahweh is the owner of the winepress. Yahweh is perfect, and he has grasped him who was given strength by Yahweh. He who praises Yahweh and who guards from the mountain or from the kingdom to teach or instruct the shalom. So I hope that was clear. He who is like Yahweh is the owner of the winepress for Yahweh is perfect, and he has grasped, he who was strengthened by Yahweh, to praise Yahweh and guard from the kingdom, from the mountain, to instruct the shalom, to give the teaching of peace, or to provide shalom, another way of seeing it. So he's guarding to bring the true teaching and to provide shalom to the earth through the praise of Yahweh, for he has been strengthened by Yahweh, who grasped him, who grabbed a hold of him, so that he can perfect him, for Yahweh is perfect, and he needs to be perfected, not Yahweh, but the last, for I just mentioned how he defiles his raiment, coming as a prodigal son, etc. And that will happen in the winepress that he owns, for he is like Yahweh. So I hope that's clear. Now, reading again, the word of Yahweh that came to Micah of Moreshet in the days of Yotam, Ahaz, Chizkiah, sovereigns of Yehudah, which he saw concerning Shomron and Jerusalem. So he saw this prophecy regarding Shomron and Jerusalem. That's important because they represent the many and the few. Shomron as the many, Jerusalem as the few. Hear, all you peoples. Listen, O earth, and all who are in it, and let the sovereign Yahweh be a witness against you. Yahweh from his set-apart temple, his set-apart Hekal. Look how perfect this is and how clear actually it is when, thanks to the Father, we see the key points that Yahweh mentions through the names and through the fact that the prophet is called Micah, who represents Mikael, and all the things that I just said. Now, once again, listen to this. Hear, all you people, all you peoples, as in Shomron and Jerusalem, the few and the many. Listen, O earth. Interesting as well because, well, people and then earth, once again, as the few and the many. Hear, all you peoples, listen, O earth, and all who are in it, and let the sovereign Yahweh be a witness. So here scripture is saying that Yahweh himself would manifest as a witness, one of the two witnesses of Revelation 11. I hope that's clear. And that witness being Mikael, represented by the prophet Micah. Hope that's clear. Not lawyer, which is Mashiach Yahushua, not judge, for that is Yahweh, but witness. So hear, all you peoples, listen, O earth, and all who are in it, and let the sovereign Yahweh be a witness against you. Now, not only he's a witness, but he's a witness against you. Not against you guys who are listening, for you believe in Mashiach, our lawyer, but against all you peoples and the earth and all who are in it. So, Yahweh is coming to the earth to be a witness against the people, against those who reject Yahushua HaMashiach. So since he's going to be against, they are going to call him an anti-Christ. They're going to call him a false prophet and many other evil things, because they are expecting someone to be all like they have imagined the Christ as they have painted it and all of that. And let the sovereign Yahweh be a witness against you. Yahweh from his set-apart Hekal, from his set-apart temple. Remember that the temple of Yahweh is Mashiach. And Mashiach, Yahushua, is the one who sends the witness, as we can see in Revelation 22. Revelation 22, Yahushua says, I, Yahushua, have sent my messenger to witness to you these matters in the assemblies. I am the root and the offspring of David. the bright and morning star. My messenger to witness. Who is the messenger, the malach of Yahushua? Mikael. So he's sending Mikael to witness. Now we have Micah prophesying in the name of Yahweh as his witness. I hope all of that is understood. I'll continue. From his set apart Heikal, for it is the Heikal who sends the last. For look, Yahweh is coming out of his place, and he shall come down and shall tread on the high places of the earth. Isaiah 26:21. Let's check it out real quick. For look, Yahweh is coming out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their crookedness. And the earth shall disclose her blood and no longer cover her killed ones. So for look, Yahweh is coming out of his place, and he shall come down and shall tread on the high places of the earth. Tread, as in treading also the winepress that he owns. And the mountains shall melt under him. In a physical or literal way, that would mean the volcanoes that are or have been erupting this past few years, and the ones that will in the following few years. The volcanic activity is a sign of the end times. The earth getting ready as a melting pot to burn many places of the earth when the plagues manifest. But also the mountains represent kingdoms that will melt once he manifests to establish his kingdom once and for all in the literal way, for his kingdom has been manifested for 2,000 years. And the mountains shall melt under him, and the valleys be cleft as wax before the fire. Before the fire. So that means he's coming as a fire, not as water. For Mashiach already came as water. Now he's coming as fire. So, and the mountain shall melt under him. And my point with saying that is that it all fits together, right, with the interpretation that we've been saying. And the mountain shall melt under him, and the valleys be cleft as wax before the fire, as waters pour down a steep place. All this is for the transgression of Jacob and for the sins of the house of Israel. Jacob and Israel representing the many and the few. Those who do not accept the name. So Yahweh uses the old name for the father of the tribes, and those who accept the name of Mashiach, and therefore they will rule as the mighty one. For remember, Yaakov means a supplanter. Israel, he who will rule as the mighty one. So the many who are trying to supplant the few, and the few who will rule like the mighty one. Also, this could be interpreted as the Jewish and the Christians, in several other ways. All this is for the transgression of Jacob and for the sins of the house of Israel. What is the transgression of Jacob? Is it not Shomrom? Right? This place right here, that, like I mentioned earlier, it represents the many. Right? So what is the transgression of Jacob? Is it not Shomrom? Many of the Israelites went towards a false doctrine, and well, we could say they were kind of all in the false doctrine, but they went away from the Torah. They made certain changes to the Torah and also mixed themselves with Gentiles. Is it not Shomrom? And what are the high places of Yehudah? Are they not Jerusalem? making reference to this part, the sins of the house of Israel, the high places of Yahudah. So idolatry. And what are the high places of Yahudah? Are they not Jerusalem? Like I was saying, we could see this as Christians and the Jewish, just like many of them kind of idolize the land, the letter, the graves, and several other things, their rabbis, etc. Obviously, when it comes to the few, for I mentioned Israel can be connected to the few as the name Yahudah connects to the few as well. Each of the few had to get out of the false doctrine which they were keeping as true, which they were keeping in a high place. And that's why also it says, are they not Jerusalem? Are they not the teaching of Shalom? So we could say because of the teaching they were receiving, as if it were from the Most High, they were making their own high places, which are the transgression, in this case, the sins of Israel. And I shall make Shomron a heap in the field. And I shall make Shomron a heap in the field, places for planting a vineyard. Remember that, like I said, the many are represented by Shomron, and the many are the grapes that are thrown in the winepress. Just like the vineyard also represents Israel itself. And I shall pour down her stones into the valley and uncover her foundations. Just like the many will have to be poured down, their blood will be pouring down into Sheol once their foundations, their errors in doctrine will be uncovered. And I shall make Shomron a heap in the field, just like the many will be gathered in the winepress to die. Places for planting a vineyard, as grapes who will give the wine for the 7 bowls of wrath. And I shall pour down her stones into the valley, as in the many being the stones, Sheol being the valley, like the valley of darkness mentioned by David, and uncover her foundations, for they didn't cover themselves with Mashiach. And all her carved images shall be beaten in pieces, and all her carved images shall be beaten in pieces. Just like, sadly, the many, or within the many, there are many who worship images, who worship idols. For instance, you guys know all the several types of idolatry that there are. And sadly, within Christianity, there's a lot of idolatry, starting from Catholicism, going all the way to the prosperity gospel, which worships money. And all her carved images shall be beaten in pieces, and all her harlot feasts, confirming that it represents the great harlot, right? The false congregation. And all her harlot feasts be burned with the fire. So you see how it connects Shomron with the harlot. And all her idols I shall lay waste, for she gathered it from the harlot fee of a whore, and they shall return to the harlot fee of a whore. Because of this, I lament and howl. I go stripped and naked. I make a lamentation like jackals, and a mourning like ostriches. That's verse 8. Because of this, I lament and howl. Al Zot, because of this, Espeda ve ve'elila. Ve'elila. You see right here, a lila. This, let's see. Well, it has the same root. The point is that it has the same root as the name Lilith, which is a creature that howls, that complains, that, well, as you guys know, that entity is called the mother of demons. So is connected to the howling during the night, because also Laila, which can be seen here, is night pretty much. And that was just to mention the connection between the word, of course, and as you see here in Hebrew. But anyways, because of this, I lament and howl. Then it says, I go stripped and naked. It says here as where they are translating as jackals, says here katanim. Tanim means dragon. So like dragons, or they would say now dinosaurs. Beyebel ki benot yana, the ostriches. So sadly, they write a word of an animal that they have seen, because most likely they don't believe that this word actually means what it means. Maybe they don't believe that dragons existed as they did, according to scripture. Because of this, I lament and howl. I go stripped and naked. That's interesting because, like I mentioned already, well, there are a couple things here I want to mention. Like I mentioned, the first came through a virgin to become our clothing, for he didn't sin, and he gave his flesh for us on the tree. The last comes through a regular relationship between man and woman, so he comes with the sin of Adam, and he himself is born in the apostasy, so he makes his mistakes or sins, which pretty much can be interpreted here. I go stripped and naked, for the last was born naked of Mashiach, of the true doctrine. So he is in shame in the sense of his sin and needs Messiah to cover him. The other thing was that, hopefully you guys remember, when Mashiach was taken to die, they tried to take another person that was following him, a youth, says the scriptures, and he was covered in a blanket pretty much, and they grabbed him, but he fled naked. So he was just covered with that. I don't know if you guys remember that. Let me go and look for it. Mark 14:50 says, and they all forsook him and fled, the disciples. And there followed him a certain young man. As I always say, Michael is called a youth, for he represents Yahweh as a youth. So a youth connects with Michael when it appears in scriptures. Obviously, we need to also take in account the context. This is a very interesting verse. It could be interpreted that it was Mark, right, the writer of the book himself, for several reasons. It is a possibility. It's also an interesting possibility, and they both could be possible. That he was the person whom Yahushua told to go and sell everything, give it to the poor, and follow him. So it is a huge, well, an interesting possibility that man did that and ended up following him, but it was a bit too late in the sense of that was the time when he was going to be killed. But the book doesn't explain who he was. That is something that we kind of need to um, investigate, try to decipher. But without those couple interpretations that I mentioned, the only one that's left is the prophetical one or the spiritual one. And like I said, that would represent Michael following Mashiach to the cross, to the sacrifice, because he himself will be going through the same in the end times. So, and there followed him a certain young man having a linen cloth, linen as the last, then cast about his naked body. And the young man laid hold on him. And the young man laid hold on him. Like the last needs Mashiach the first. And he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked. Well, in this case, right, the young man, meaning those who were trying to grab him, and the young man laid hold on him, on the young man. And he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked. So that represents the last having to die for Mashiach, because in this case, as in all the cases, the clothing represents the body. So being naked represents the soul being naked of the body. That means dying. So when they took off his clothes, that represented that he had to die as well for Mashiach as the last will. Hope that's understood. This also connects with the time when Joseph was being tempted by the wife of Potiphar, and he fled, but she grabbed him in his clothing. Well, she grabbed him, and when he left, his clothing basically were kept by her, and then she used it as evidence of him trying to rape her, and that is the reason why they put him in jail, which represents how the last will be accused of something that will get him killed, leave him naked. Hope that's clear. So the fleeing naked connects with this young man who represents Michael, with Joseph, for Michael would come through Joseph from Ephraim as the last. And now with this other verse, I go stripped and naked. Hopefully the last one have to go literally stripped and naked around because Yahweh does he says to a prophet to do that, and the prophet was like, no, really, do I have to? Yes, because they need to see how they will be going to exile. So hopefully that won't have to happen for him, pretty much. Well, but like I said, it connects with Joseph, the young man in the time of Yahushua, and the fact that the last is born naked in the sense of the true doctrine, and in the sense that he has to die for Mashiach as well. So he will be naked of the body. I make a lamentation like Tanim, and a mourning like ostriches. Interestingly enough, Ephraim is compared to a reem, which is said to have been a type of dragon. Ostriches are, of course, fowl that do not fly. Like the last was Michael, once entering into a human body, won't be able to ascend like he used to until he fulfills the mission. And ostriches are not pure animals, just like the Tanim. Therefore, it represents that he would come not like the first who came without sin. but as a regular person, so that there is no excuse given by no one in judgment. You see how they write dragons in this translation? I will make a wailing like dragons and mourning as the owls instead of ostriches. Here's the Tanin, dragon, serpent, sea monster, dinosaur. Right there. Then we have the other one, which is Yana, an unclean bird. So like I said, he's coming like Michael, entering a body that will be in apostasy, so therefore will become or would become unclean. Michael is a bird because he is an angel. Birds represent angels. The unclean, I already explained it. So they translated as owl, ostrich, literally translated as daughters of the owl. That is very interesting because Lilith, which I just mentioned not long ago, is compared to the owl. And that appears in Isaiah 34. So the screech owl, 39:17, we go to see it, is Lilith, the mother of demons, who is said to have been the first female creation before Chava, before Eve. Lilith, name of a female goddess known as a night demon who haunts the desolate places of Edom. And we just saw that Yahweh would come from Edom. We saw that from Isaiah, but it connected with Micah, right? He would come from Edom, and he would be born in an apostasy because of the great whore of Babylon. Who's the great whore of Babylon? Lilith. So he would be born in the false doctrine through that congregation, and therefore would have a connection spiritually to that spirit that he then needs to destroy. And that's why he needs to come out of it, so that he can destroy it afterwards. I hope that is clear. Which is also connected to the commandment that many people or some have asked me about. What is the importance of the commandment that says that one should not cook the kid, meaning the goat, in the milk of his mother, because the last will be born in the apostasy, and the apostasy then will try to cook him, will kill him through fire. So the whore and the enemy who uses the Torah to condemn will be breaking the Torah by killing the last through the influence of the great whore. Just like when the daughter of Herodias decided to ask for the head of Yahuhanan the Immerser, Eliyahu. And because of her, Herod decided to kill him. So the beast, like Herod, because of the influence of the great whore, like the woman he was having adultery with, because of that influence, will decide to kill the two witnesses, one of which is Eliyahu, just like Herod killed Eliyahu because of that influence from that woman who represents the great whore. Might be a nocturnal animal that inhabits desolate places. When it comes to the owl can see during the night and can turn its head 180 degrees. So it represents an animal that can see anything, everything. So that's why they use it for schools, universities, things that have to do with knowledge. And they use it to represent Lucifer as the all-seeing eye. So with all of that said, let me go back. Because of this, I lament and howl. I go stripped and naked. I make a lamentation like dragons, in a morning like owls or ostriches. Hope everything that I mentioned about that is clear. For her wounds are incurable. You see how he was talking about the whore and then mentions the owls and mentions the word that connects with Lilith, right? Not just owls, which would be, let me, Yan, right? But in verse 8, like I mentioned, when he says, I lament and howl, he uses a word right here that is connected with the word Lilith. See how Lamed Yud, Tav. And here we have Yud, Lamed, Hey. And in fact, this is the root, Lamed Yud, Lamed, as you see here, from Lil. Lail, night, gloom. Isn't it interesting that there are so many rappers who call themselves Lil this, Lil that, Lil? Lil would be Lamed Yud Lamed, as in they come from that Ruach, that spirit. And no doubt, that is their muse. My point is, mentions the harlot, the whore, the howling, the owl, the dragons. And then he mentions, for her wounds are incurable, the wounds of the great whore. And that's why the many who keep following that false doctrine will have to die, for their wounds are incurable. For it has come to Yehudah, it has come to the gate of my people, to Jerusalem. And as we know, Yahushua is the actual gate of his people. The great whore, after Mashiach came, decided to use what Mashiach did and turn it into a false doctrine for the people to follow the Christ that she would bring, her son, like Tammuz. Do not declare it in God. Do not declare it in God. Weep not at all in Beit Afra. Roll yourself in the dust. Do not declare it in the winepress, as in they won't hear it. They don't want to hear it. They won't understand it, even if they hear it. Also, we could say, do not declare it to God. I mean, the God of this world, God, Lucifer, he does not understand the full plan of Yahweh. No matter how wise he thinks he is, no matter how much light Yahweh gave him, the full plan is not understood by Lucifer, who is called God. Weep not at all in Beit Afra. Roll yourself in the dust, as in a way of mourning, repentance. Beit Afra, the house of Afra, which would be the house to dust, or house of dust. You see, Afar, man was made from dust, Genesis 2:7, and Yahweh Elohim formed man of the Afar, of the dust of the earth. Dry earth, dust, powder, ashes, earth, ground, etc. So do not declare it in God. Weep not at all in Beit Afra. Roll yourself in the dust. You see, this is another one of many verses that confirm, thankfully, what I always mention about the importance of names and how Yahweh uses names. because we just saw Beit Afra, the house of dust. So that's why Yahweh says, roll yourself in the dust. We not at all in the house of dust. Roll yourself in the dust. So that means that when he uses God, he's also using it for a reason. Like I mentioned, pass by in nakedness and shame, you inhabitant of Shafir. The inhabitant of Saanan has not gone out. The lamentation of Beit Etzel takes from you its standing place. Let me check out those names. Shafir, Zaanan, Beit Etzel, Marot, Heights. Let me see. Shafir means fair, beautiful. Zaanan, pointed, or place of flocks. Yeah, comes from Son right here, which is a flock. Place of flocks. Bet Esel, house of narrowing. House of firm root, of a fixed seat. It could be also said as house on the side, the house next to you, the neighbor. And then marot, which comes after, which would be bitterness, from mar, bitter. So hopefully I'll remember each of them. Pass by in nakedness and shame, you inhabitant of Shafir, you inhabitant of that which is beautiful. But now they are naked and in shame. Those who took advantage of their beauty in an evil way, as for instance, whores. Pass by in nakedness and shame, just like the false congregations who do everything for the money. They will be naked and in shame, no matter how beautiful their congregations were, no matter how beautiful their churches were, their buildings, how luxurious they were, or any of that. The inhabitant of Saanan, the inhabitant of Saanan, the flock, the place of flocks. So, makes sense, the inhabitant of the place of flocks, the inhabitant of the congregations where they are called sheep, right? The flocks, has not gone out. The inhabitant of Saanan has not gone out. Interesting that Yahweh said to his sheep, come out of her, my people, so that you may not share in with her plagues. But the inhabitant of the flocks has not gone out. That's why they will have to go through the pain, through a certain punishment that will be for rectification. The lamentation of Beit Esel takes from you its standing place. Those who are on the side, on the house right next to you, will take your place, which can be seen as the few will take the place that the many are expecting or hoping to get, or the wicked ones will take their places once they get rid of them from this reality. The lamentation of Beit Esel takes from you its standing place. Also, you see how the few go through the narrow way, the narrow gate. And those who go through the way that is narrow, who have a firm root, will be the ones who take the place of the many. The lamentation of Beit Esel takes from you its standing place. Though the inhabitants of Marot, of bitterness, waited for good, though the inhabitants of bitterness waited for good, Yet evil came down from Yahweh to the gate of Jerusalem. Marot. Isn't it interesting, as you can see here, Mar. Now, let me go to the translator. Let's see how this goes. If we write that word right here, Mar, you see, you add a Yud and you have Mary. That's why those who worship Mary will go through bitterness, because they are in rebellion. And there is not just one Mary, right? Because no matter where you go, they have a different Mary whom they worship. A black one, a blonde one, a poor one, a rich one, the Queen of Heaven, Queen of the Angels, Guadalupe, Trinidad, Trinity, well, and a bunch of other names that they give to what they claim was the mother of the Christ manifesting to them wherever the place may be. So they give several different names to the woman they worship, and they don't realize that that woman is not the mother of Mashiach, but Lilith. Once again, that same spirit that brings bitterness and rebellion. And I say that there are many because the word marot is the plural, right? Ot is plural. So marot, you see what that's why they write bitter fountains, plural. Marot can be seen as the congregations that are bitter fountains because they give a doctrine that worships Mary in different ways. Just like the word Baalim, which is lords. They worship many lords because they worship the Lord God, the Lord Jesus. And when it comes to Catholicism, there are many types of Jesus. In fact, we could say that there's a different Jesus for every different Christian denomination, because one Jesus in a specific denomination likes this but doesn't like that, and in another denomination, that Jesus likes that which they didn't like and doesn't like that which they liked. And that's why they are not the same denomination, because they have different doctrines regarding what he says should happen, should be done, and whatever. So hopefully that was understood. So though the inhabitants of Marot waited for good, though the inhabitants of the congregations where they are given doctrines of bitterness, of rebellion, though they are waiting for good, as in the rapture, sadly, evil came down from Yahweh to the gate of Jerusalem. Pain will come to them, punishment. O inhabitant of Lachish, which is another term for lion, invincible, obstinate. Let me see, because pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, it is another name also that represents a type of lion, which I guess is the reason for this word being translated as invincible. So, O inhabitant of invincible, harness the chariot to the horse. She was the beginning of sin to the daughter of Sion, right? The harlot, being called Shomrom in this chapter. Harness the chariot to the horse. Oh, this is interesting. O inhabitant of invincible, harness the chariot to the horse. She was the beginning of sin to the daughter of Sion, for the transgressions of Israel were found in you. In Sion were found the transgressions of Israel. We could also say in the inhabitant of Lachish. But remember that in Revelation 12, Revelation 6, chapter 1 and 2, we have that it says, and I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures saying, like a sound of thunder, come and see. And I looked, and I saw a white horse, and he who sat on it holding a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out overcoming and to overcome. Overcoming and to overcome. So pretty much he is invincible. And not only that, if you look at the previous chapters, you realize that the creature that says, come and see, one of the four living creatures that says, come and see, like a sound of thunder, is the lion. So like I said, the connection of Lachish, the word Lachish with lion, who is an animal that seems to be invincible, for he is the king of the jungle. So, O inhabitant, who is invincible, harness the chariot to the horse, he who overcomes. She was the beginning, the whore was the beginning of sin to the daughter of Sion, to those who accept Mashiach. She gave a false doctrine and led them to transgression. For the transgressions of Israel were found in you, were found in Sion. And we could say even in he who overcomes, for he was born in the apostasy. The same error was found in him. So now when he pays for himself, he will pay also for Sion. Obviously in Mashiach, for Mashiach already paid for all of us. But even when he came and paid, people continue to rebel against him. And that is why the last must come and also die. There are many ways in which that can be explained, or reasons why that has to be the way things happen. Therefore, you shall give parting gifts to Mordechai God. Therefore, you shall give parting gifts to Mordechai God, to the owner of the winepress. You shall give parting gifts to the owner of the winepress. The houses of Akzib becoming a deception to the sovereigns of Israel. Let me go and see Akzib. Deceit, how important. And you see, because if you read Micah, you'll get the message, but like half of it, unless you read or understand the meanings of the names that are mentioned by Yahweh. Why is he mentioning each of those names of places? Historically, perhaps because there were people over there doing what he's going to punish. But not only those places were going through that. However, Yahweh uses the names of those places because they go with the prophecy. So, Akzib, deceit. So now it says, therefore you shall give parting gifts to the owner of the winepress. The houses of deception, the houses of deceit, becoming a deception to the sovereigns of Israel. It's perfect. The understanding, of course, not the fact that this happened. The houses of Akzib becoming a deception to the sovereigns of Israel. So the houses of deceit sadly became that which deceived Israel, even its sovereigns. Again, I shall bring a dispossessor to you, O inhabitant of Mareshah. The esteem of Israel shall come to Adullam. The esteem of Israel shall come to Adullam. This is important. But let's see Mareshah real quick, which seems to be the same as Mordechai. But let's see anyways. Adullam and Mareshah. Crest of a hill. It's also Marashot, place at the head, dominion, head place. And that is because here in the middle of the word, we find the word Rosh, which means head. The fountain of the head, the source of the head, or Mareshat, which means crest of a hill, right? The head of a mountain. So it is similar to Moreshet, clearly doesn't have the taf, and the vowel in the beginning is different. So Resh also is beginning, so like the beginning of the mountain from the top down. Yet I will bring an heir unto thee, O inhabitant of the head of the hill, inhabitant of the head of the mountain. That heir is pretty much the head of the mountain, the head or leader of the kingdom. And let me see real quick this word heir, because they are writing this possessor and the other translation. To seize, to dispossess, that's why, take possession of, inherit, disinherit, occupy, impoverish. So the one who will take possession, he who comes to seize the world, he who overcomes. And also it's interesting because he who comes as the last, like I said, is born in the apostasy, just like the prodigal son ended up poor. And you see how the word also connects with coming to poverty, to be poor, impoverished. Because he basically spent everything that the father had given him. Remember, the prodigal son. And he is the one who overcomes, mentioned or represented by the word lakish right here. Again, I shall bring an heir or dispossessor to you, O inhabitant of the head of the hill. The honor, the esteem of Israel shall come to Adulam. Adulam means justice of the people. That's interesting for several reasons. One of them, it confirms what I was mentioning, because the last comes to bring justice to the people, just like Mashiach came to bring mercy. They rejected the mercy, so now justice must manifest. Also, justice of the people is pretty much the meaning of the word in Greek, Laodikeia. It says Laodikeia, justice of the people, right? So another name that could be given to Laodikeia in Hebrew, or the name in Hebrew, would be Adulam. Laodikeia is the last of the congregations mentioned in Revelation 2 and 3, the last of the seven. For several reasons, it represents the false doctrine that the world would be following during the very end of times. So in a way, we could say the honor of Yahweh shall come to Laodikeia, to the congregation of the end. Now let me go to chapter 3. It says, and to the messenger of the assembly in Laodikeia write, the Amen. Why does he say the Amen? Because that is the last thing we say in a prayer, because it is talking to the last congregation. The trustworthy and true witness. The witness. When he comes as a witness, the witness like Moshe. The beginning of the creation of Elohim. The beginning of the creation of Elohim. As we just saw here, Mareshah, the beginning of the mountain, the head of the mountain. Says this, I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. I would I would that you were cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I am going to vomit you out of my mouth. Because you say, rich I am, and I am made rich, like many people nowadays with the prosperity gospel, with their opinions, with their way of thinking different than Yahweh's way of thinking according to scriptures. Rich I am, and I am made rich, and need none at all, and do not know that you are wretched and pitiable, and poor, and blind, and naked. I advise you to buy from me gold refined in the fire. This is interesting because the gold is tested in a oven of fire. So the last, who is the witness, as we just saw here, comes as the fire to offer the true gold, which is the doctrine of the kingdom, to those who are willing to buy it through their words, not through money. I advise you to buy from me gold refined in the fire so that you become rich, and white garments so that you become dressed, so that the shame of your nakedness might not be shown, like he just mentioned about them going naked and in shame. Pass by in nakedness and shame, you inhabitant of Shafir, you inhabitant of the beautiful. So those who, because of their external beauty, take advantage of others will end up naked and in shame, just like Laodicea, who take advantage of those who follow that false doctrine. They are actually already naked and will be ashamed if they don't buy the garments that Yahweh offers, so that you become dressed, so that the shame of your nakedness might not be shown, and anoint your eyes with ointment, so that you see. The Ruach HaKodesh, to be anointed in order to be able to understand. As many as I love, I reprove and discipline, so be ardent and repent. See, I stand at the door and knock. You see how it said, the steam of Israel shall come to Adulam. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I shall come in to him and dine with him, and he with me. To him who overcomes, the Lachish, the invincible one, I shall give to sit with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the assemblies. The steam of Israel shall come to Adulam. Another thing, like I said, Adulam, the justice of the people. So the honor of Yahweh shall come to bring justice to the people. Steam would be kabod. There are other ones, but most likely it's kabod, verse 15. Awesome. Yeah, 15 at the very end. Ad Adulam Yabo Kebod Israel. Till Adulam, the justice of the people, will come the honor, steam of Israel. Interestingly enough, you see this word right here, Ayin Dalet. We saw that word yesterday. Ayin Dalet, until, right? As in until Adulam. But let's put the plural to see if it changes it. I'm just gonna add a yud and a mem. You see, witnesses, because 8 is witness, ad is until. Same word, two different things. So once again, we could read, the witness is the justice of the people. He will come as the honor of Israel, for he comes as a king. The kabod of Yahweh connects with his kingship, while the favor, chesed or chen, connects with Yahushua, the first, the mercy, the Kohen Gadol. So this verse is very interesting. Plus, you see, David therefore departed thence and escaped to the cave of Adullam. David, who represents the last, for Mashiach is the root of David, fled when Shaul, who represents Halel, was looking for him to kill him, to Adullam. And when his brethren and all his father's house heard it, they went down thither to him. So that is when the chosen few start to gather with him in Adullam to bring justice to the people. And 3 of the 30 chief went down and came to David in the harvest time unto the cave of Adullam, and the troop of Philistines pitched in the valley of Rephaim. And you see it here, a town of the Canaanites allotted to Yehudah and lying in the lowlands side of the cave where David hid. So that place is key, for it connects with how David was protected by Yahweh in that place, and then was able to raise to power, or was anointed as the king of Israel. So with everything that I just said, hopefully you see how this verse is very important, or is very clear when we understand what these two places mean. Again, I shall bring an heir to you, O inhabitant of the head of the mountain, the kingdom. The honor, the kabod of Israel, which is the king, shall come to Adullam, like David, the king, shall come to bring justice to the people, shall come to the last congregation of the end times. Make yourself bold. Done. That's right, Omar. Done that. All right. Make yourself bold and cut off your hair for the children of your delight. The head represents the firmament. Each hair represents a star, which are many to count for those who have hair. Yahweh says that he knows the number of each of the hairs that each person has on their head. And it is also written that the sons of Abraham and those of Yitzhak would be like the stars of heaven. So children are represented by stars, and the hairs represent, therefore, both children and stars, for the head is the dome. So make yourself bold and cut off your hair for the children of your delight. Just like the people would be cut off from the land, that was represented by them cutting their hair as a way of mourning. I hope that's understood. Make yourself bald and cut off your hair for the children of your delight. Enlarge your boldness like an eagle. A bald eagle. Enlarge your boldness like an eagle. That's interesting as well, because the last is Michael. Michael is represented by a bird. In this case, the eagle is the king of birds. So that would be the main one to represent he who is the stem of Israel, the king who goes to Adullam. And it's also one of the 4 creatures that is around the throne, right? The cherubim, who have 4 different shapes or animals, which are the ox, the eagle, the lion, and in this case, man, who is not an animal, but a different form, was my point. So make yourself, and also eagles are unclean animals. So it also fits with what I mentioned earlier when it mentioned the owl and the ostrich. Make yourself bald and cut off your hair from the children of your delight. Enlarge your boldness like an eagle, for they shall be exiled from you. Like the people of Israel, and then the many who will be killed like the many hairs on the head. And that could be also prophecy of um, what we've been talking about, Micah representing Michael coming as the witness and all the things. So we got a good look, brother Omar, Yahoo, and the other boldies that are in the congregation. We are many. So that's how that chapter ends. Let me go and see if there are questions. Can you run that last verse again? I didn't quite get it. Make yourself bold and cut off your hair for the children of your delight. As in the children being the people of Israel who were about to be punished and exiled from the land. Just like when you cut your hair, you're pretty much exiling your hairs from your head. So the head representing the land, the hairs representing the children. So since they will be cut off, then cut off your hair as a representation of the prophecy, right? Of what will happen. And like I was mentioning, the head represents the dome. The hairs can be connected to the stars that are way too many to count. Yet Yahweh knows how many there are. And he said that the children of Abraham would be like the stars of heaven. So children, stars, and hairs are all connected when it comes to symbolism. So make yourself bold and cut off your hair for the children of your delight, because that's what would happen to them. Enlarge your boldness like an eagle. Interesting, enlarge your boldness, how normally a person that goes, well, a man that goes bald only goes bald on the top. But it's like saying enlarge it, like take it all the way, the whole head, to be bold, because the whole land will be bold of people. Enlarge your boldness like an eagle. And the eagle is connected to one of the four cherubim that surrounds the throne, and it represents Mashiach as the messenger from heaven. It connects with Michael as an angel, who now Yahweh is telling, become bold because of the plagues that are coming to the earth. For they shall be exiled from you, like the many will have to go through pain and die because of the rebellion.